Hello everyone. It's been a minute. A long minute. And I'm probably gonna put this video, do it in two parts, because one is just the history and the physical and everything that's been going on, and then there's also the spiritual lesson side of everything. And I think they're both important, and the context is important to kind of the big picture. So hopefully you agree, and because I know I get long-winded at times, I decided I'm hoping I split it into two. That's my intention. It was definitely time to do this. I've been feeling the call and the urge for a week or so, but it just didn't feel right until today. So it's very hot here. We're in the 80s. We choose not to use air conditioning, so it's definitely hot being pregnant. I'm 27 weeks pregnant, and so apparently, let me get into the physical. So from the start of this pregnancy, I had what I thought was typical morning sickness and things like that. I had food aversions, and while odd and weird, I've had some with my other 4 pregnancies. And so for this one, it wasn't, I'm older, and whatever, the baby's just picky. So, never really thought too much about it. Pretty early on, I realized I just could not eat meat, did not like meat, did not want anything to do with meat. And which ended up being very odd, because my iron was extremely low. And in fact, a few months ago, we discovered that it was at critical levels, where, it's questionable oxygen and things like that moving around, carbon dioxide levels, and just all very concerning. And we're homesteading. I'm a very natural-minded person, and I don't like to use allopathic medicine frequently. However, I'm also a VBAC, and so my first child was a C-section, which cascade of interventions and things like that. If I could do it over again, I would, but I can't, so it is what it is. But all of my other children have been VBACs, 1 at the hospital, my second, and number 3 and 4 at home. And the plan was always for this one to be home birth, but I always like to make sure everything is safe for both of us. And obviously I don't want anything tragic happening in front of my kids or anything like that, if at all possible. And so I choose to have kind of dual care. And when we discovered, they were kind of hoping for me to have this iron infusion earlier, but I was very determined to try to fix it on my own. I even ground up my own beef liver, made my own, stuffed my own capsules by hand and everything. But no matter what I did, I couldn't get my levels up. And I've also had gastric bypass. I guess very complicated medical, and when I was still using allopathic medicine, and obviously. And apparently I'm over 10 years out, and this is a common side effect for people who are 10 years post-op for gastric bypass. And then I've also, you add that I've had 3 babies, and this is another pregnancy since then, and all those things take a toll. Okay. So when we found out the levels were critical, I decided to go get an iron infusion because, in case you're not aware, your body doubles in blood volume and you use a lot of iron to make more blood while you're pregnant. And this happens a couple times throughout pregnancy, but particularly around 18 and 28 weeks. So I was coming to that point, and I was already feeling crappy and attributed everything to my iron being low and just being pregnant in general. And the weird aversion to meat, whatever. You know, that was just pregnancy related too. And I really, right before the iron infusion, I felt like garbage. I literally went from a very thriving person who was doing things and pushing myself to do things, even if it was really hard on me, and even if I paid for it for days, I would still go and try and do. And I finally got to the point where I literally couldn't do that anymore. I was in self-preservation mode. And there were days I could not get out of bed, not get out of my chair, not do much of anything. And thankfully my husband's job, his shift is 3 days a week, so the other 4 days he was home. I have an amazing teenager that has also been incredibly helpful, and my family really did damage control and supported however they could, and I really tried to be mom and fill in the blanks, and you know, I'd go lay down and then I'd get up and I'd do, but it really was to the point that nothing external outside of my household was happening. And I was really scared about the iron infusion. I had bad premonition feelings about it, and I was really scared to do it. And nothing happened immediately. And then that evening I started having chest pain. And so over the course of the next week or so, almost 2 weeks, we ended up in the ER 3 times with heart-related symptoms, and they were getting worse and it was not getting better. And the more I would try to get up and do and move, the more it hurt. And you know, I heard everything from panic attack to, you know, everything else. And you know, to rule out some of these worst case scenarios, because women do develop like congestive heart failure while pregnant and things like that. I mean, there's these rare things that happen. And you know, I had to make some decisions that, even looking back, I don't think I could make another choice, but they were hard and heart-wrenching to deal with, knowing that not only was my body going through this, but this little baby that is in my body was going through this. And that was, you know, really difficult to wrap my head and my heart around. And thankfully, everything kept coming back normal, but also not thankfully, because you just, when you're feeling like crap, you just want an answer. And I've had fibromyalgia. I went to allopathic doctors and you know, went down a very bad road, and then slowly pulled myself out with herbal medicine and healing. And you know, so that's part of my journey and my story too. And so even part of me having to go and do these tests and ask for help, and that was like a whole nother level of physical and emotional and spiritual, like just what is going on. And you know, just like I can't even surrender at this point, because it's really hard to just let go when you kind of want and need answers. It's a very human thing, right? So I wasn't getting better, and we at first were thinking, okay, this is just somehow related to the iron infusion. There were things online and whatnot, and one of the ER doctors finally said, yes, it could possibly be, you know, related to it, and as a side effect, and it will go away over the next month. So we just kind of kept hoping and kind of gave ourselves, the infusion was right before June, and we kind of gave ourselves like a July 4th deadline, like I should be better by then. And that, and we, you know, we were hopeful this is just a side effect. It's going to kind of dissipate down it through my system, whatever's going on that my body doesn't like, it's, you know, going to slowly die down and go away. And it didn't. And, you know, you're going and asking for help in a system that you really don't have that much confidence in anyway, but you need some sort of answers to know kind of how to go and move forward. And I begged the hospital midwife to do more blood work. I'm like, please, like, let's just run all the liver enzymes again, and run, you know, run my B vitamins, run my iron again. Like, maybe for some reason I didn't absorb this, even though they're, you know, it was an IV infusion. Like, just grasping at straws, going back through everything that happened. And she says, well, I wonder if you have, when we start talking about the meat and stuff, she goes, I wonder if you have the tick thing where you can't eat meat. And I mean, I was able to eat meat. I wasn't having anaphylaxis or anything. I just didn't want to eat it. And I'm like, at this point, I'll test whatever you want. Take all the blood from my body, my arm, whatever. Just let's figure it out. And what's one more test at this point? That blood work took over a week to come back. And it was so hard waiting and just, you know, wanting to compare those liver enzymes to ER visits and things like that, and never in a million years thinking it was going to be this tick-borne disease called alpha-gal syndrome, which makes you basically allergic to all mammal products. And so basically, over my entire pregnancy, anytime I was eating a mammal product, whether it be meat, dairy, or an additive made from those products, it was making me sick. And there's even people that are so, you know, sensitive that smell and touch can trigger a reaction. And heart, feeling like you're having a heart attack can be a symptom. So it all started to come into place a little bit more, and I think probably after the infusion my eating habits got worse. I probably was eating more dairy and stuff like that, and more comfort food. I think I was having cheese fries every day because that's where I was at. That's what I could manage. And I know I got a tick bite around in February or end of January. I normally use homeopathy for that. I use Ledum, and I literally, because I feel and know to myself that it helps, I had 4 or 5 tubes of it all around in various places, so if the kids got to buy it, I'd remember to give it to them and stuff like that. Literally all 4 tubes had like 1 or 2 pellets in them, and you're supposed to at least take it 3 times a day for treatment after a tick bite. So I didn't have enough, and I had to order more, and by the time it got to my rural location, I took a few more pellets, but didn't do a full course of treatment like I normally would, because I was just lazy, or whatever, or it was divine intervention, or whatever you want to say. So there's some self-accountability there as well. So trying to wrap this up to keep it under 20 minutes. So now I've cut, and my approach is not what everybody with AGS does. It's what I mentally and physically need to do right now, because, and part of that is because I'm pregnant too. My approach, if I wasn't pregnant, might be a little bit different. But I'm really trying to avoid needing or using an EpiPen, so my approach at this point has been to literally eliminate any and all mammal products, and then slowly try things that could be a possible trigger, but hopefully not. So like things like sugar can be made with bone char from mammals, and that can cause a reaction in some people. So unless it's a sugar that is processed a certain way, I am trying not to consume it. So this has basically meant that I've gone vegan at this point, because even chicken and turkey products have things injected into them or that are used that can cause a trigger for alpha-gal syndrome. So that's been a very hard component, and it's been a very huge financial impact. My whole family cannot go on this diet with me. It would be, there's no way that we could afford to do it, and it's hard just for me too. While I feel like living, so trying different vegan cheeses and things like that. On promising notes, I am going to start acupuncture at the end of August, so I have to wait a bit, but they have a very effective treatment for AGS. There's one study that's been done, I mean, small sample size and everything, but 96% of participants considered their symptoms resolved, which is very promising. And I'm willing to take a gamble on that. I also had 3 or 4 different people mention that procedure to me within days of diagnosis, including the pharmacist when I was picking up my EpiPen, in case I do develop an anaphylactic reaction to something. I did also have a cross-contamination reaction within my household, so I had to separate all of my dishes and utensils, cookware, storage, everything. I have my own sponge at the sink to wash my own dishes, because I just can't risk that. My throat started to close, and I took a natural Benadryl, and thankfully did not need to use my EpiPen. But when you have an organic strawberry and it suddenly tastes like pork grease, you know something's wrong. Thankfully, I spit it out and didn't swallow it. I've also had odd things like I made a pork salsa in the crock pot, something I've made for years and years. And because I've removed all these other triggers and stuff, I now know when I'm having something new. So while they were dishing up dinner, I started having heart palpitations and pain, and I knew that meant I'm somewhat sensitive with my sense of smell to this, and it was causing a reaction. And so I had to go to the bedroom, and physically and emotionally, that has made this very isolating, even more so. I can't kiss my husband or my kids without making sure they've, you know, washed hands, washed around their mouth. Obviously for my husband, brushing his teeth. So his dental health is improving greatly. But that's been really difficult because I'm a very physical touch person. I want to cuddle my kids and I want to love on them, and my husband too. And it's just not something that I can jump up and do right now, and that I think would make most people sad, if they're, especially if that's your love language of touch and everything. So we're starting to get into the emotional stuff, and I really want to make that a separate video. So I hope you'll join me for part 2, and we'll dive deeper into all of that. Thanks for joining me.